Hello, Year 11s. So, with your exams on the way, I thought I would give you a little bit of a breakdown on what the key case studies you need to revise for your GCSEs. Okay, and the first thing I want to kind of clarify on is I distinguish the type of case studies you need to learn into two categories. Case studies, which in my opinion offer breadth and depth of knowledge for a key geographical location, and examples, which offer specific knowledge of a single event or a situation. Okay, they're very different because often they are to do with the time we spent analyzing them. So example of a case study would be Nigeria or Lagos. It'd be the UK or London. It'd be the Western Desert. For Nigeria, we spent a good 5-6 lessons. Lagos, so 5-6 lessons. Same for the UK, London. Western Desert, we did about 4 lessons. Whereas lessons on the Nepalese earthquake or Typhoon Haiyan or sustainability in urban unit in Freiburg, all of those were just a 1 hour lesson. It's usually to do with one event like the earthquake or the tropical storm or sustainability. It's a single event or situation, is single location. Whereas Nigeria, we will talk about the whole country. Lagos is a massive city. Same for London, the UK. Okay, so there's the reason I say these big differences is the case studies you really need to know. Obviously, the Nigeria, the UK, the London, Lagos, or the Western Desert. These single events arguably, it doesn't really matter which one you want to use. We do some in class, like we do in Nepal, we do Typhoon Haiyan, we do Freiburg, we could do Cockermouth, Boscastle. I know we did L'Aquila for this current academic year, but next year we're going to do Christchurch, and I know some geography teachers prefer to teach Chile. It doesn't really matter which one you learn as long as you learn one event of a low-income country or high-income country. Okay, so I'm still going to break them down as much as I can to give you a hint, but what I'm going to share with you is for the 2022-2023 academic year, and as we teach in like in any school, each school will have its own list, and each year in Redland we might change our list. Okay, so paper one case studies. The way I look at it is there's three big ones. Okay, Yellowstone. We spent a lesson on it, so it's more of an example, really. You could use instead of a small scale ecosystem. Okay, we use Yellowstone in a lesson. We looked at producers, consumers, decomposers. For a food chain, we looked at food webs, which was food chains that are interlinked together. We had a look at the nutrient cycle. We talked about biotic, abiotic factors. But equally, you could learn about, I think the textbook has Epping Forest. I remember teaching my old school about a pond. It doesn't really matter which one you use, provided it's a small scale ecosystem. Okay, it's just a one single event. However, for when we did rainforest and when we did hot environments, that is a case study. Brazil is where we looked the country we looked at. Sometimes Malaysia might be a country you revise because it's a lot of revision guides. And so in Brazil or Malaysia, there's you need to learn about types of plants that have adapted. Okay, this pitcher plant has adapted by having a pitcher water inside with some enzymes which dilute some animals. So technically, it's carnivorous, and that's how it gets its nutrients. Jaguar, it's easy. It's got camouflage, so it can easily hide. It can climb trees, etc. Just tell me how it's adapted to this environment. And then in the rainforest, we looked at the causes of deforestation. You've got a list of them here. You've got impact of deforestation. You've got a list of them there. And you've got management. What can we do to reduce deforestation? And arguably, whether Brazil, Malaysia, it doesn't really matter which country you pick, but Brazil is kind of one we focused on predominantly in this academic year. And a hot desert, similarly, adaptation. Think about the cacti, the Joshua tree, the camels, how they've adapted to the local environment. The opportunities of Western Desert was farming, energy, tourism, mining. Tourism, we had Las Vegas. Energy, we had solar energy. Mining, we had oil and minerals. Farming, we had, because obviously photosynthesis is quite good on the edge of that desert. Okay, challenges are obviously water is accessibility. It's easy, hard to get to. Some places are desert. Population growth. Las Vegas is huge. They're absolutely draining the Hoover Dam next door. Extreme temperatures are one. Okay. Threats to hot environments. Sorry, is obviously overcultivation, overgrazing, population growth, removal of wood. All this leads to the biggest threat, which we call desertification. Things we can do to slow down desertification is we can plant trees. Think of the Great Green Wall of Africa. Think about more appropriate technology like drip irrigation rather than like spraying fields in a hot condition. Water harvesting, which is collecting water in dams like the Hoover Dam has attempted to do, etc. Okay. That question there will be in the exam will always be about hot or cold. We do hot, only answer hot. If you answer cold, fend for yourselves. We did not teach any of it in class because we don't have to. Okay. So, paper one case study on physical landscapes, which is a second part, the second of three parts for paper one, is rivers and coasts. And in rivers and coasts, we have a look at for rivers, we have a look at Boscastle. I should have added up here actually. Rivers. First section is rivers. We look at Boscastle in the UK. We look at processes. We look at management. So what is Boscastle? What are the key processes, etc. Where then we have a look at what they've done to try and reduce the risk in the future. You've got lovely pictures there of Boscastle I took when I went on a holiday there, as I would as a geography teacher. And then our example of a river was a Severn River. So we've got this location, its course, and things we've done around the Severn River to reduce the risk of flooding. Okay, they did two case studies, but I call them if examples because we spent one lesson on each for rivers. And similarly, your example for coast is Lyme Regis, where we looked at different types of hard and soft engineering. Okay, but those were all very much examples because we spent 1 hour on them. Okay, and then the final part of paper one is your natural hazards. And natural hazards, again, they're all examples in essence because we spent a lesson on them, just a bit, potentially a bit more sometimes. But your low income country is Nepalese earthquake. You've got a bit of context here. Here's some of the impacts and responses. And then we often do L'Aquila in Italy as your high income country. I know some teachers have taught Chile, and recently we've actually changed to Christchurch in New Zealand. Okay, but it doesn't really matter provided you've got an example of a high income country. And then comes to weather, low income country example of weather, extreme weather is Typhoon Haiyan, and the high income country example is Cockermouth. Boscastle also works, but we thought we'd teach Cockermouth because it's a different example of a similar event. And the name's quite funny, I'm not gonna lie. So anyway, that's for paper one, case studies and examples. In paper two now, same thing. I'm going to break down paper two in its three different sections. So first section of paper two is urban issues. These in paper two, you definitely have more case studies because we spent hours and hours on each. We looked at London, okay? Why London is the contextual reasons why London matters, reasons why London matters, how London's been shaped by migration, the opportunities and challenges of London. Then after about 4 or 5 lessons on this, we looked at Lagos. Did the exact same thing in Lagos. So, for example, in Lagos, we looked at areas that are struggling. We looked at Makoko, and in London, we also had a look at some areas that are struggling and what they're doing with them. So we looked at Shoreditch and how they've improved Shoreditch. And then an example of sustainable living is Freiburg in Germany. Okay, that was an example. So you've got a picture here of London and Lagos. When it comes to natural resources, those are very much examples rather than case studies. We did both actually in one lesson. One of them is micro hydropower. So small scale projects in the Andes that use relief rainfall. It's basically fog nets. They trap clouds that are rising above the Andes. They trap the water, and the water is harvested through gravity and allows them to water the crops. And the Jasper Solar Farm in South Africa is located in Kimberley, which happened to be the second city in the world to have electric streetlights after Philadelphia in 1882. But it's an area that has a huge amount of sunshine. They've provided huge advantages like providing jobs and using local workers. However, most of the money goes back to the big corporations that aren't necessarily based in local communities. So that would be the negatives. Okay, so there are two examples. In the final part of paper two, changing economic world, we have Tunisia, which is an example of tourism as a way of closing the development gap. We teach Tunisia. Some schools teach Jamaica. It very much depends, but you've got a bit of contextual information, opportunities, and challenges here. The two case studies we spent a lot of time on were Nigeria and the UK. So I've given you for both context, opportunities, challenges of both countries. Okay. The reason we've picked Nigeria and the UK is because it means by revising Nigeria and the UK, you are also in some ways revising Lagos and London. So it kind of makes your revision a little bit easier. Okay, that's for paper two. And the final one is probably the easiest, paper three, your case studies, where there's only two really. For human field work, we always do it at Bristol Harborside. Physical fieldwork this academic year, or for current year 11s, we went to Margam Park in South Wales in what was the hottest heat wave ever in history of Great Britain. I think it was scorchingly hot. This year we're going to Blaise Castle Estate. Doesn't really matter where we went, as long as you can tell me the location of our trip and what we did there and what data we collected and how we collected it, what could be improved and what our conclusions were. So in the case of Harborside, we were looking at whether Bristol Harborside regeneration was successful. In the case of the river Nant Phillips in Margam, or the river, the Hazel Brook in Blaze. We're just looking at whether it fits the Bradshaw model. Okay. I hope this video helps. I hope this video somewhat reassures you of what you need to learn and what the case studies and examples are. But like I said, case studies are critical. You need to learn them. The examples are what we did in class. I want you to learn the ones I've put on this PowerPoint. But if you have your own version, you've studied a different one in your revision guide, you can also use that one. Okay.